So, Suzanne, it's so great to see you. And
Yes,
I just want to
same
see if
here.
you can start out our interview by telling us something about how you developed your psychic or mediumistic abilities and maybe a few stories related to that.
Since I think I was a child, I was psychic, but I thought everybody had the same thing as I had. So I always could feel people's emotions and whether there was something wrong with them physically. And I always would know things before they happened. So this precognition. When I was a teenager, the dreams started, the precognitive dreams. So as far as I can remember, I've always been very, very psychic. I thought everybody was. I didn't know that I was different in that aspect until many, many years later. I don't have, extraordinary stories because, like I said, they're so normal to me that everything, even the extraordinary stories at that moment, were normal. But there was this occasion when I was, I think, about 12 or 13 years old. We had a dog at the time. We always had dogs in the house, but I was walking with that dog in the fields, and I will never ever forget this. Certainly, I started shifting towards another state of consciousness. And of course, at that time, I had no clue what happened. And all of a sudden, I felt this great sense of oneness. And I have no clue how long that lasted. But I felt that in those moments, everything in the universe made so much sense. It was like a lot of knowledge was downloaded, so to speak. In that moment, I knew everything, and yet I had no clue what I knew. And this sounds very strange, but when I came out of it, I started to think about what I actually had learned. And most of it I couldn't even remember. And the experience was so profound that I started to cry. And I came home and I told my mother, and I was angry with the world at the same time because I knew that we were all connected. I knew that this whole universe was one big organism, and we were all part of what I call nowadays God. And I was so angry with humanity for not understanding that, and destroying the world, and engaging wars. And I didn't understand that at all at that moment anymore. And that passed too. Anger also went away. But that was, for me, the most profound and extraordinary thing that happened. Although it is mediumistic, it's nothing to do with the spirit world. It's more to do with shifting consciousness and, realizing that there's more to this life than just a physical.
Did that kind of rewire you in any way? Did you find that there was a change in your intuitive awareness after that?
Not at first. And if it did, it happened so gradually that I wasn't aware of it. But looking back, I now understand that it must have, because that's when the predictive dream started, etc. Yeah. At that time, everything that happened to me was like a normal thing. My mother is very psychic as well, very intuitive. My father has healing abilities. And so I grew up in a family where all of that was quite normal.
Mhm. And you live and now and lived in the Netherlands, and if I remember correctly, your parents were teachers, and they were unusually accepting of your
Yeah.
abilities,
Yes.
which I expect opens the channel somewhat because you don't have to hide and deny or
Yeah.
doubt your ability.
That didn't mean to say that they completely understood me, because they have abilities too, but not to the extent that I have them. So even within my psychic family, I was quite a bit, out of the ordinary, not the norm. My
Yes.
mother used to say to my father, that one is not holding any normal job. She's either going to be an artist or anything creative, because she's not not the norm. Yeah.
Yes. So what happened in your first mediumistic encounter?
Well, I can't say that I remember my first one, but I do remember my first one that I was aware of the fact that it was spirit, because I know that on a lot of occasion prior to that, I had contact with spirit. I just didn't know. I went to this school for psychics. And that in itself is a quite extraordinary story, because I had no idea I was a medium, that people like me were called that. And I held an ordinary job. I was a manager in an international company. And at that point, I was single, and I thought I'm going to book a holiday. And I was browsing through a magazine. And all of a sudden, I saw a picture of a building. And while still browsing, not reading the article, a thought came up in my head, and oh, this is where I'm going. And then 5 pages later, I thought, that's a strange thought. So I went back and to look at the building, and I thought, yeah, I'm going there, but I still no clue, what the building was. And then I started to read the article, and it was an international school for people developing their intuitive side. And within 5 minutes, I had booked a course, had no clue what the course was about. And when I paid the course, I thought, what did I just do? What did I book? And then I thought, okay, I'm not, gonna think about this. I'm just gonna pack my bag, and I'm going to bring my walking shoes, because if I don't like the course, I'm going to walk in the environment, because it was in England and beautiful countryside. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to be bothered by it, because with the course came lodgings and food. So I thought, okay, just like booking a hotel, and if I don't like the course, I'm going to walk outside for the whole day and come back in the evening, no worries. So I arrived in England, and as soon as I stepped inside the building, I had this incredible sense of being home. And again, I thought, this is strange, because I'd never been there. So this was in the afternoon, and the next day the course started, and I never forget it. It was the first day. Nobody in the room knew each other. I didn't know the teacher, and she didn't ask anything. She just said, okay. She pointed at me. She says, do you want to come in front of the class? And I was, like, okay, not a problem. So I stepped in front of the class, and she says, okay, now make a contact. And I thought, okay, I'm going to, shake hands with people sitting there and, introduce myself. And I had no clue what she was talking about. So I just went up to somebody and, introducing myself, and okay, my name is Suzanne, and the teacher, started laughing a bit, and she called me back, and she said, what are you doing? And I said, well, you asked me to make a contact. And she said, no, this is not what I mean. You have to make a contact with somebody in the spirit world. And I looked at her and I thought, in the spirit world? What's that? And she says, well, somebody who passed away. And I looked at her like I was, okay, this is so not for me. I'm going to, excuse myself, go to the bathroom, put on my walking shoes and walk out of here. And she said, okay, you obviously, this is your first time here. And I said, yes. And she says, and obviously you don't know what you're doing here. And I said, that's right. This is an intuitive course. And she said, no, it's not. And I said, so what's this? Where am I? And she says, well, this is a mediumship course, and you're a medium, and you can make spirit contact. And she says, would you like to try? And I said, yeah, well, why not? Well, as long as I'm here. I mean, I was already embarrassed in front of everybody. So I thought, okay, let's give it a go. And she says, just make up a story. And I started to talk about the lady, and that I knew that she, loved bars, and when she was in bars, she would used to dance on the tables, and I described how she looked, and I said, okay, and my hands are getting really, really cold. There's really something wrong with my hands, and I said, okay, my heart starts to palp now, so I think she has a heart condition, and I just started to make up a story. And sure enough, there was somebody, which was actually the teacher herself, who could recognize everything I said. And I had her sister in the spirit world, which I described perfectly. Everything that was wrong with her physically, because she had metal in her hands because of an accident, and she died of a heart attack, and she did love to go to bars, and she was very notorious for dancing on the tables, and everything I said. And I was just, expecting to make up a story, because that's what she said, just make up a story. And everything I said, she could recognize. And she says, yes, this is my sister, and she's standing on the right side. And so I sat down, and, that's a lot to take in. This was my first spirit contact, basically. Yeah.
That was really clever of her to say make up a story, because then you just listen to whatever story pops into your mind.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course, obviously, she was used to, newbies like me who had absolutely no clue. And I was very fortunate. The teachers I have encountered was so skillful and so talented, and yet so modest. Yeah.
So really it was a natural ability for you that was connected to your early intuitive gifts, and
Yeah.
possibly enhanced by that mystical experience in the field when you were young. And so how did it progress then? Did you just start doing readings for other people, or did
No.
you go to courses? How did
Yeah.
you expand on it?
I have never worked, still don't, as a professional medium. So the first 4 years, I just started going back to England 2 times a year. So 2 weeks in a year, I started doing courses there. After that, I started doing courses in other places in the world. So I started to expand and, experiment a little. This is basically what I did. So week courses and stuff like that.
And gradually came to trust your abilities.
That's it. That's it. Yes, because I believe that abilities cannot be developed. It's the medium that develops, and the abilities are already there. It's like, when you have a rose in a bud, when it unfolds, and this is how we call a mediumistic unfoldment. We call it unfoldment. It's still a rose, whether it's in a bud or whether it has blossomed. There's nothing added to it and nothing enhanced when it becomes a full grown rose. Everything is already there. It just needs to unfold, and the unfoldment is basically the medium developing themselves and not the abilities. Yeah.
So do you give readings to people, or do you only teach?
I don't give readings, no. I don't have a private practice as a medium. I do demonstrations, though. I teach, and within those teaching environments, which is usually spiritual centers. Now, they can be small, they can be large, they can be, wherever in the world. But usually within those centers, they have demonstration nights. So for people who have never encountered mediumship or want to enlist for mediumistic training or psychic development, they have evenings with tutors demonstrating. So then you go up to a podium, and you make contact either with a double link with a spirit artist or by yourself, and in that way people can see your abilities and also have proof that there's more to this life than just the physical. Yeah.
What does it mean to people when you do a demonstration or someone else does a reading for them? What does it add to their lives?
I can't say what it's adding to people's lives because that's so personal. But for me, mediumship is all about healing. So if you have made a contact and no healing has taken place either on this side of life with the recipient or in the other world, because somebody comes back and say, okay, I know I could have been a better mom or a father, or I know that I did something wrong and I really want to apologize and please forgive me. So if there hasn't healing taking place on either sides, um, you haven't done your job as a medium. So for me, mediumship, besides proving to people that life is eternal, to me it's all about healing.
That makes a
So
lot of sense.
yeah, so for me, normally, and this is maybe also the reason why some spirits want to work with me, is I get a lot of people who have unfinished business. Last Sunday, I did a demonstration with one of the centers, and my first contact, sure enough, was a mother in the spirit world. Confessed to her daughter that she hurted the people she loved most in life. Now, either both, because I could feel, you can feel, spirit emotions. Both were getting very emotional, and I talked a little bit about her mother, and about the characteristics and what had happened. Obviously, because it's in public, you don't go into details, personal details. That is. But you could, she could recognize her mother in so many other aspects I'd given her about moving and, physical things. And at the end of the contact, she said, I have forgiven my mother. I forgive her. And that to me is the most, rewarding thing about demonstrating or making a contact. It's almost like well, it is to me a sacred thing. So I don't make contacts just for the fun of it, or I don't walk into the street and walk up to people and say, hey, whatever. I don't do that, but that's a personal thing.
That's beautiful. Yes, I imagine for some people, there is tremendous healing in just their realization that there is another side and that the person is
Absolutely.
still alive and cares and very possibly happier or in less pain than they were when they were on the planet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, what does meditation, brainwave expansion, and the idea of a spiritual life have to do with the abilities to be a medium? How do those things relate, or do they?
Well, this is not an easy question. Yes and no. And this is, I think I need to explain this a little bit, because I need to start with making the difference between psychic and mediumistic. Now, here in Europe, we, and I believe in America that's a little bit different, but here in Europe, we distinguish between psychics and mediums, because everybody is psychic in whatever degree, because that's within the makeup of our human physicality. We are able to get information from energy, from everything that's living, because everything that's living has an aura and is has an energy field around it. So being psychic means that you're able to tap into that energy and get information from it. Now, every medium is psychic because it's a precondition for mediumship. But not every psychic is a medium. Now, coming back to your question, what has meditation and, getting another state of consciousness to do with mediumship or your psychic abilities? I believe that with developing your consciousness, growing towards a higher state of consciousness, your psychic abilities will enhance. I'm not sure, though, that your mediumistic abilities will enhance because they're either there or they're not there. So you're developing the precondition to be a better medium by developing your psychic awareness. But with mediumship, I believe that there has to be already an ability there. Then the question is why isn't everybody a medium?
Yes.
Yeah. I think this has to do with the variety of life. Not everybody is a man, not everybody is a woman, not everybody has the same characteristics or physical abilities. And that's the same thing with mental ability, so to speak.
So maybe it's that mediums are just tuned that way. There's some wiring or some special composition within the body, mind, and spirit that just flips a switch and then you're on.
Yeah. I believe that that's true. I know that, especially for physical mediums, that that's true.
Say a little bit about physical mediums. Well, I mean, they're about manifestation of an energy that moves into physical form, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
They, through their physical makeup, the spirit world is able to manifest through them. So it's not them being able to manifest something. It's the spirit world manifesting through them because of their makeup. Yeah.
And that's pretty rare, isn't it, to be a physical medium?
Yes, extremely.
Have you met people who can do that?
Yes. Yeah. I'm currently investigating some of the most world famous physical mediums, and I'm very, very fortunate that they granted me their cooperation because in the past a lot of physical mediums have been hurt by investigations, people who had no clue what they were doing, and I mean literally hurt until death followed. So usually physical mediums don't cooperate in public, for one, and two, if they do, they do not allow anybody to investigate them. Yeah.
And you'll investigate them with the mind mirror?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
That's going to be fascinating, and we really look forward to that research that you're doing. I don't know that there is going to be a specific brainwave pattern, like you can train it and then boom, you flip that switch. And in fact, I think that you've done something like 75 sessions on medium so far, and are finding, in fact, that there is no, seemingly so far, may not be a specific brainwave pattern, but that indeed their brainwaves are different from each other and from most other people. So in terms of research, I'm really excited that you're doing this. It's very frontier work.
Yes, I'm not looking for a specific pattern as such, because like you said, I don't believe, but I dare anybody to prove me wrong, because that would be, a milestone. But I don't believe that there's a general pattern for mediums. But by investigating states of consciousness with mediums, there is so much more you can tell about the way they work, or how spirit works through them, that's so interesting than just finding a general pattern. I might, but the goal is not to find a general pattern for physical mediums.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and some concepts that might not be familiar to a lot of people. And I wonder, before we let you go, is there anything you'd like to add? Anything that you'd like to mention to people that might be of help to them regarding intuitive and or mediumistic abilities and their ability to develop them?
Not so much about mediumistic abilities, again, because I believe they're either there or they're not there. But some people might be mediums without realizing it, like I was, although they might know that they're psychic. But I believe that if you meditate regularly or as I used to say, or still do, go to your altered state of consciousness, because that might not be a meditative pattern. Just go to your altered state of consciousness and spend some time every day in that state. That might develop something as you are developing. Now, depending on your starting point, you might get more psychic, or you might realize that some of the information you're receiving might not be from, your higher self or psychic energy, and might be from spirit. But the ultimate goal, of course, is not being more psychic or developing mediumship. The ultimate goal, of course, is realizing yourself. The ultimate goal, I believe, is realizing that you're God, in essence. And I believe that if you make that your goal, then everything that should be there or you're born with will develop by itself.
Beautiful. Thank you for your time, for your insights, and for your loving spirit.
Well, thank you, Judith, for inviting me. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the interviews.